This is Blaine Scully. Welcome to the Captain's Code. Each week, we talk with the leaders of high-performance teams about the role they play in making a culture of excellence possible. My guest this week is Guido, president of the San Francisco 49ers, who oversees all key business initiatives for the team. Al also concurrently serves as CEO and co-managing partner of Elevate Sport Ventures, an organization that is uncovering and developing new revenue streams for sports and entertainment businesses. Al has received multiple accolades for his leadership and impact, including 2 appearances on the Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40 list, and the franchise being named the 2017 ESPN Sports Humanitarian Team of the Year Award. Al, if we could just kind of start with a little bit about your journey and your background, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey. I was born in Philadelphia, raised in South Jersey. Learned work ethic from my mom and dad. My mom, worked 2 jobs till 11 o'clock at night, put food on the table. And I made my way through high school. I think we moved probably somewhere around 10 times before I was 17 years old and, got the opportunity. I was literally going to go in the military. I went to the Army Rangers office, like the local recruiting office. I filled out all my paperwork and I was sort of waiting to hear back on what the next steps were going to be. In between that time, my cousin was playing college football at a school called Trenton State College. And so I went up there and visited him to watch the game on a Saturday. And the coach comes up and says, "Hey, you're Guido." I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "You played quarterback at Washington Township High School, whatever." And I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "Why don't you apply to come here? We'd love to have you." And I said, "I'm not, coach, I really don't think I'd get in. I went through some trouble as a kid when I was a junior in my grades." And he's like, "Listen, I think you're probably better off than you think. Just apply." And so I applied thinking, even if I got in, how am I going to afford it?
Is this college in New Jersey?
Yep. Yeah. And so I get in. I get my acceptance letter, and I'm stoked. So I played 3 years of college football and was able to graduate in 3 years and decided to just stop. I could have went to school my 4th year and played, but I just said, let me go in the working world. I took a job as a financial advisor. I was waiting tables. So I'd go to school. I'd wait tables after practice. We'd play our games on Saturday. I'd do a double on Sunday to pay. And then I met a guy with his wife. They would come in every single Friday night. I would serve their table, and he's like, "Hey, I work for this financial advisor firm. I'd love to give you a job." So I went to go do that. And 6 months later, I just didn't love it. Like for me, it didn't have the sort of the teamwork, the camaraderie, the connection. Yeah, it didn't feel like a locker room. And I was sort of striving, I wanted that. My dad knew how big of a sports fan I was. And so he called me up one day and said the Philadelphia 76ers and Flyers were hiring. And then I took a job at $6 an hour on a 3-month guarantee. And then the rest of it's sort of just history. Every 18 months, I've jumped around from team to team to team until I got my big break with the Cowboys, and spent 3 years there opening up Cowboy Stadium. We launched a consulting firm, got hired by the Niners, and the rest is history.
Why do you think you crave that sport connection? Is it just kind of growing up being a sports fan, and then you decide, okay, that's missing from my life, and now I want to take the experience I had as an athlete, and then really try to continue to chase that for what I do professionally?
That's exactly right. I think when you're a kid and you want to play sports, it might be because you idolize some professional athlete and you want to be them one day. And I'm sure, I have 3 little girls right now who love, the U.S. women's soccer team. And then what you come to find out, I think, when you play it is you still aspire to be that, but really what you get out of it is all the work ethic, the character building traits, and tremendous friends for life. People that will always care about you and want the best for you in your life and will push you, will pick you up when you're down, right? Will celebrate you when you're up. And I wanted to work in an environment that had that feel, like we were all in it together. We were all striving for one goal. And yeah, of course, in the business world, we all want to have our own individual success. But our individual success really didn't mean anything unless our team had some success. And I felt like sports was that place to do it. I knew I was never going to be able to impact it on the field, given my stature and athletic ability. And so if I could impact it in some small way off the field, and no different than how we choose our teams. Obviously in high school, we don't get to choose our teams where we live. But I just so happened to play for a really good coach in college who had my best interest at heart, who cared about me as an individual more than he cared about me as a player. And then the same thing, like when I got out, I just wanted to choose good opportunities, working for really good people that frankly cared about me first, more than the job itself. And if I did that, I thought that those people would would look out for me and give me opportunities, whether they be at the actual team I was at or maybe in this world. And so sports is like this, it's, everybody thinks of it as this big, ecosystem, right? And to some degree it is. There's 30 professional teams and the 5 or 6 big leagues, but really it's this small sort of fraternity sorority. And
still people-based.
Yeah, it's very much a people-driven business, and I think once you're in it, you're in it. And as long as you got good people on your side, good teammates, you can be really successful.
So how do you build that from an organization side, that sort of connection? So like you said, you're not on the field. And frankly, from your experience going from whether it's Phoenix to the Cowboys and then to the 49ers, and you have some stuff in between, and you kind of ascended pretty quickly. So it's like this probably hybrid where you're almost learning on the fly, almost working in cross with people who may be more experienced with you in that position, but at the end of the day, you're focusing on what your performance and believe in. But how do you drive that as an emerging leader in the industry, but then also kind of set the cultural standard?
It's challenging. I think first and foremost, it's all about hiring and being around really good people, right? Nobody does anything on their own. In team sports, our people are our intellectual property, right? We're not software companies. We're not technologists. We're a people-driven business. And so I try to balance it with, I try to focus a lot of my time on the things that I frankly think I can do well, and don't focus a lot of my time on the things I can't do well. Like hire unbelievably brilliant, smart people on the things that might be, I don't call them weaknesses, more just blind spots for me. It's all about surrounding, no different than anything else, right? Football team has a quarterback that needs to surround themselves. You could have the best quarterback in the world. If it doesn't have a good O-line, that person's not going to be successful. And I could be the best sales marketer ever, right? But if I don't have a good product, if I don't have a good marketing team, right? If I don't have a good financial backing, then I'll never be successful.
How do you ID those people first and foremost, and then how do you grow and develop those people in order to be positive contributors to, effectively not only the organization but the team specifically?
To me, it's intellectual curiosity. So, if at the highest level, certainly you need to be experienced. You need to have done it, maybe.
Subject matter expertise.
Right, exactly. Some subject matter expertise. The best people, the most successful people are those who sort of have some grit and perseverance to them. Especially where I grew up in the sales vertical, right? 95% of your life is spent in failure. Every cold call you make, every email touch point you have, it generally doesn't result. And so 9 out of 10 times you fail. And so to try to figure out how to hire for that, the mentality around someone that doesn't get burnt out. Cornerbacks have it in football a lot. Mm-hmm. If I get burnt on one play, can I forget about it, right? Can I not lose my technique? And so what I'm looking for is really hungry people, intellectually curious about how the business should run. Not only how the business should run, but what is out there in the future. We can't all foresee it. We're not all experts, but we need to be on the cutting edge of what the new trends are to make sure we don't miss it. And then people who foster really good camaraderie, right? Who lift each other up, who are not all about themselves. Bill Walsh has this great book, right? And in it, sort of 10 things great leaders do. And everybody might think it's spend a lot of money on a staff, and it's about giving everybody the resources and tools they need to do their job. Making sure that someone has a best friend inside their work, right? That they can rely on in down times. It's more of what people might think is more touchy-feely, but I think of those as the core principles around caring for each individual, looking out for them as a person, in the office and outside of the offices, then giving them the resources they need to do their job, giving them enough scope or sort of rope to do their job on their behalf the way that they think they should do it without micromanaging. And if you do those things, you got to be willing to deal with a little bit of failure here and there. People are going to fall on their face. I do all the time. But allowing them to get back up and supporting them while at it. If you do that, I think you could grow a really good team.
Yeah, I love that because I was actually thinking about, I'm an athlete, so I'm totally comfortable with understanding, okay, failure is inevitable, but doesn't necessarily mean it's final. I get the next play to potentially go out and affect the next outcome.
We all make mistakes. No one is there is no perfect person, right? And I think you got to give people the rope that's how you learn. I call it scar tissue, right? I don't hurt myself anymore. Yeah. At least I try not to.
I got some.
But I have scar tissue in business, right? You make a mistake, you learn from it, and as long as the mistake was made with the right intent, right? I was trying my hardest. I thought about it. I did the due diligence necessary, and I made the decision that I thought was best at the time. Like if you chose that, if that was your criteria, great. Like do it all over again. But when you get to the finish line, maybe try something different, right? Or if you missed one piece of input or output, like okay, what was it? What could you have done throughout the process? But try not to dwell on it. I mean, because listen, what I love about my business or our business is sports and entertainment is escape from life for everybody else. Like we're not curing cancer. We're not your life insurance policy, right? We're your escape. So we're going to make mistakes. But we're there to, be like we joked about it before we got on air. Like I'm holding the keys right now. And I realize and pinch myself every day that millions of people that are 49ers fans would love to do what I get to do. I walk to this podcast across the Levi Stadium football field. And if I try to remember it in those terms, like what we do is supposed to be fun. Yes, we're a for-profit entity. Yes, we have to run a business. But if it's not fun, if we're not supporting each other, clapping for each other, helping out our fans, then what really are we?
Yeah, I love that. And kind of going back to the Bill Walsh thing, because The Score Takes Care of Itself is like one of my favorite books ever. Because it helped me as a young athlete. It's like, okay, well, when you're young, you focus on what it is I need to do, right? And then when you get a little bit older, you think about yourself in the context of the team and how can I help us achieve, which, effectively we all want to win anyway. So it's like that interesting transition. But I'm wondering from a sort of an organizational level, when you have, and maybe it'd be interesting to pull from your experience from the Cowboys and from the 49ers, when you're dealing with an organization with a lot of legacy and history, how do you incorporate all the really positive stuff that frankly is a part of you, but at the same time be able to like, okay, well, this is who we have been, this is who we are, but at the same time, we still need to do things our own way a little bit. So how is that as a leader trying to sort of drive that and maintain that grounding as well?
It's actually easy in the building. It's harder outside. So I think our fans here at the 49ers and to some degree the Cowboys, we have such a rich history where anything we change, if we change the font on the field from what it was in the 80s and 90s, like that in and of itself is like, whoa, what are you guys doing? Right? And so if we get too far out of that, but I think for us, we joke our marketing slogan is like faithful then, faithful now. Our oval never changes. What you cheer for never changes. The hero feature is still the 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on special teams, and the broader team. The things in and around that have to change, right? They have to evolve. They have to get better. If we're making decisions that are like in the best interest of our fans and we explain it to them, they'll be okay with it. The stadium move is a great example, right? We played in Candlestick Park. It was the oldest non-renovated stadium in the U.S. We were 31st in revenue in the entire National Football League. And it was hard, right? I mean, I grew up going to Veterans Stadium and I know what that felt like, right? And to some degree, like you go with your parents, you go with your friends, and you have all these moments that you're attached to in this place that has all this history. And someone say, like, why would you build something new? Well, you have to maintain, you have to sustain your business, you have to put a winning product on the field. And so to do that, we needed to build new. And there's all these, like, everybody's like, well, you should have stayed where you were. And it's like, well, it wasn't feasible with, the land that you need to build it on, right? The politics here, the lack of public money. And by the way, I totally agree with that. Like, we should have built our own stadium and financed ourselves, and we did. And so then you got to pick a spot that's right for your fans for the long haul. And it's not going to feel great. Like, it's 50 miles south of where it was. Frankly, it's closer to a lot of our season ticket holders than we were at Candlestick Park. But I don't try to get caught up in trying to sell them on, that they shouldn't be hurt by that. Like, they should have an emotional attachment to that. But they should also understand the reasons why it makes sense for our franchise, their franchise, and the future, and the product that we can put on the field given the resources that we might have at our disposal now. Sports in and of itself is cyclical. We're going to win, we're going to lose. As long as we're transparent with our fans, like, here's the decisions we're making, here's the reasons why, here's how we think it will benefit you. And even sometimes here's like, it's not going to benefit you. We're about to embark on a development next door. It's going to dramatically impact parking and transportation, probably in a negative way. But the end result of that is going to be unbelievably positive. And so I think when you describe it in that way to the fans, They totally understand it and they appreciate it. It's like, just tell me what's going on. Here's what we're doing. Here's why. Here's how it impacts you. Here's why we think it's the right thing. We will not always be 100% right. But if we go about it that way, I don't think our fans will care or say like, oh my God, you're pulling away so much from the past and you're trying to be so different. Like Levi's is our name here. It's a great example, right? Tremendous amount of history. And so I used to joke with Chip Berg and JC Curley. Chip Berg is the CEO. Like, you can embrace sort of your legacy brand and still be aspirational in nature. Like, you can do both. And I think we're kind of the same way. Like, our fans who've been with us for so long, we need to embrace that and embrace how passionate they are about the past and the things that, but we also need to realize that there's young people right now who are deciding what sports they're going to be a fan of, which teams they're going to be a fan of. And we need to, as a business, connect to those who are making those choices. And how we market to them or how we communicate with them might be very different than how we communicate to a 30-year season ticket holder all the way back to Kezar, right? And so I think in this day and age, you should be able to do both. And technology has given us the platform to have certain messages that go to fans that want them that way and certain messages that go to our younger demographic. You can embrace history and challenge the future or embrace the future at the same time.
As far as you individually and kind of not just like your roles, which is pretty extensive, both in the organization and from a stadium standpoint, also Elevate, but then also like your family as well. So how do you kind of manage like the balance is like part of the challenge of being an athlete, although it's singular and focused and not really have to worry about the level of admin, which I call it, that what you would have to do. It's still even a challenge to like manage the pressure of performance on the weekend, but also making sure I have enough time for my wife and to do some things like life experience stuff, So like, how do you kind of individually be able to do that?
It's hard. This whole work-life balance thing is like, no one's figured it out. There's, everyone has a different answer. And I got lucky. Like I was able to get a partner in my wife who worked in the sports industry, who understood what it meant, and who is now a tremendous role model for my girls, right? In a fairly still male-dominated industry that's thankfully changing, but not at the pace I want it to change. She understands and appreciates the hours that we have to put in. She also knows she married a person who's like driven by certain things, and if I wasn't doing all those things, I'd be bored. You wouldn't be doing. And I'm not like, we joke at times, and she's like, you'll climb up a mountain and then instead of walking down all the way, you'll just go create another one and try to climb it. And that's just how you're built. And if you weren't doing that, you'd actually be miserable. You'd be a miserable husband. You'd be miserable at home. But don't get me wrong. There's times where I'll miss one of my daughter's games and I'll question myself. Is this all worth it? I never get this time back. But then I reconcile that with, I think my daughters are proud of their how hard I work, and I go back and look at my mom and dad weren't always around, but that's because they were doing whatever they humanly possibly could to give me a better life. And I don't fault them for that. As a matter of fact, I think it helped me learn what it meant to work hard and treat people right. And I focus on what is the most important thing now? And family's always the most important thing. And so I try to be selective around what I do right now. But I think my daughters, I love when they walk in here and they feel this is the place that daddy works. And those experiences, they're priceless. And I get to go all over the country with my girls and show them parts of the world I never saw as a kid. And if that might mean I miss, a Wednesday night practice, it stinks, but it's sort of the trade-offs we make.
So how would you define leadership? I know it's a loaded question. I know it's tough.
So we embarked on this whole journey with Simon Sinek, who became a mentor of mine. He wrote this whole book, Start With Why. A lot of people know it, obviously. He gave a very popular TED Talk. At the 49ers, what we really wanted to recreate was we had to get away from the definition of success only being Super Bowl wins. Obviously, that's our goal every year. That's what we strive to do, but the way we define it for now, it could change, but it's our why and purpose is to go a step further for someone so they feel part of our family. And that filter for me is leadership. Am I treating my employees or our employees the way that I would want to be treated, right? What would I do for a family member that I wouldn't do for an employee? And they should be the same. I should do both. Yeah, at the end of the day, we all need fiscal responsibility, but that doesn't mean that you can't treat people with purpose and care. And, I used to tell my managers after I was a terrible manager when I first became a manager, because I did all the things I thought I should do instead of just become leading the way that I would want to lead. Might not be the right way. I try to do it out of a book. And then after my first year, I decided I was going to say, listen, every time I meet with somebody, I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes of that conversation asking nothing but personal questions. Who they are, what motivated them, what they're fearful of, childhood, whatever, some of the stuff we just did today. Because if I can get a baseline understanding of what motivates you, what are your fears, what do you aspire to be, who might you look up to, it helps me as a manager or leader just think through how I might want to interact with that person. And everyone's different, right? Everybody is motivated by different things. I think the definition of leadership is, frankly, truly caring for those in your care. And, I often steal quotes from people, and there's this really one powerful one that's leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. And if you think about it through that lens, I'm only going to be as good, or we're only going to be as good as, frankly, maybe the lowest paid employee on our payroll feels about coming into work every single day. And look, you're never going to get 100% there, but I think the goal should be to try and get 100% of pride and value and feeling around when I pull up at my work. Am I sprinting into the office because I just want to be a part of the team? Am I motivated by the job I do, right? Am I mentally stimulated by my role and responsibility? Do I love the people I get to do it with? Do I feel like they have my back? If all of those things check the box, I wake up in the morning, my feet hit the ground, and I'm sprinting here. And then to answer your work-life balance, this is sort of the balance, right? At the end of a hard work day, can I look myself in the mirror, so I did everything I possibly could, I worked as hard as I could, I put my 2 feet home, and I sprint my tail home, because I want to get back to my kids and my family to cherish every moment. If I check those 2 boxes, then we've done a good job of leadership. It's not easy, and trust me, we're not perfect. We fail a lot. I certainly do. And I'm not perfect every single day. I just think it's acknowledging those times and sort of brushing them off, and then, coming the next day with a better attitude.
Awesome, man. Well, again, real grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the opportunity.
Awesome.
Now it's time for our Captain's Code top takeaways, the big ideas in leadership that we took away from our conversation here today. This week's takeaways are all about leading your people. As Al shared, when it comes to your teams, your people really are your intellectual property. So surround yourself with the best and brightest, and then help them to unleash their talents. Give your team the tools and resources they need to succeed, which include empowering them to take risks. You can't fear failure. Making mistakes is part of business. As long as you learn from those mistakes, you have the opportunity to grow from them. When it comes to people management, Al also believes that real leaders take care of their team members. They get to know the person behind the role, what gets them excited to come in every day and contribute to the team. And finally, one of the best ways to show you care, being present. By providing undivided attention to the person you are with, you create quality moments that have real impact.